يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن
يا شيخ.
الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه صدق
يا شيخ
الله
حسبك.
العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a wonderful recitation by our PRO in person of Malam Nafiu Aliu Ntifa. Sheikh Jazakumullahu Khaira. While Sheikh was reciting the Noble Quran, I noticed in our mix the presence of our speaker in person of Professor Kabir Yusuf Hamdani. Sheikh, you are welcome. Although we cannot see your face, it's like you joined with audio. We cannot see your face, but you are welcome, Sheikh. Please, as I said earlier, let's endeavor to mute our audio. Please, let's mute our audio from our side. Try as much as we can to mute our audio to reduce the risk of interruptions while the presentation is going on. The next item on our agenda is introductions like citation of the speaker. That is going to be done by myself. Our speaker today, you will agree with me, is a seasoned professional, a learned professor, and a presenter that is worthy of the topic given to him. Let's take a look at the CV of the presenter. On the CV, we will notice that our presenter studied broadcast journalism from Sudan University of Science and Technology. So he's a holder of PhD from Sudan University of Science and Technology. He proceeded in the same school. The presenter obtained Masters of Science from the same school in the same broadcasting journalism. Before then, he was at Bayero University, Kano, where he studied mass communication and Arabic language. He is also a holder of postgraduate diploma in community development, advanced diploma in public administration, was literary editor at Leadership newspaper from 2008 to 2009, adjunct lecturer at Sudan University of Science and Technology from 2009 to 2010. He is a visiting research fellow at Istanbul University in 2012. He was a lecturer, Kaduna State University, a senior State University. He was a communication consultant at Adam Smith International. He was a visiting professor, University of Manitoba in 2018. Our presenter, brothers and sisters, is an associate professor currently working with Nile University, Abuja. Our presenter today has authored so many books and so many translations and transliterations. Worthy of note, among which it was his work in 2013, just the root of sainthood and its conditions. This was a translation from selected writings of Sheikh Uthman bin Fodio. This particular work of our presenter is what attracted us to grant him this noble topic for him to discuss, and I'm sure he will do justice to it. Sheikh, you are welcome. I can see so many other colleagues joining. Everybody that comes, we welcome you, and I'm sure we are going to benefit from each other. To summarize it all, that is the profile of our presenter today, and I'm sure we are all set to hear from presentation. Professor, you are welcome. You are welcome to Seal of Prophethood Youth Vanguard presentation for the month of December 2020. We are happy to have you in our mix. Jazakallahu khairan presentation. Thank you very much, Sheikh. It's time for you to start. Tafaddal mashkur. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi. Audible enough. Can everyone hear me? I hope I'm audible enough. Can everybody hear me so that I can
Sorry,
continue?
I think our professor is finding it difficult to join. It may be network problem. Let's be patient while he gets across. And before Sheikh finally join, I would like to...
He has joined. He has joined.
If we have any question, please let's endeavor to type the question in the chat box. It will be taken care of by the Sheikh, inshallah, after the presentation.
He has joined.
Sheikh, can you hear us?
I can hear you very clear and loud. In fact, I've started speaking. I want to be sure that everyone can hear me audibly enough.
We can hear you, Prof. You can start.
Oh, okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على خيرة البشر سيدنا مولانا محمد بن عبد الله المبعوث بالحق رحمة للعالمين. My brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. From the citation given, I was myself very eager to see who is this Professor M.K. Yusuf that is going to speak, because the person giving the citation has really painted a picture of a very big gargantuan scholar, which I'm not, of course. I'm just a brother who is keen and interested in issues that part of the concern of Muslim Ummah, and I always want to contribute my quota in whatever form and way that I can, sometimes talking, sometimes listening, sometimes even coming together with brothers to do community work. And this time around, it happens that I am to speak about one of the issues that concerns the Muslims Ummah. And I'm glad that you people organized this event. I'm very happy, first of all, with the name of the organization.
Like there is problem with the audio.
There's problem with my network.
We cannot hear you from here. We cannot hear you at all. It's like there's problem with the audio.
Allow him to keep the tweet. He's audible. He's audible, Sheikh. Allow him to keep.
Yeah,
it's very audible. We can hear him clear.
Network is a little bit problematic. Yeah. So let me continue. Like I was saying, I'm very glad with the name of the organization, and I'm also glad with the title of the topic. And if I can remember, the title given to me to speak about today is Sufism as a Solution to the 21st Century Problem. And before I say anything, I would like to think together with my audience. When we say Sufism and as a solution to the problems of the 21st century, it means there are some basic assumptions we are having. First of all is that we assume that in the 21st century, there's a problem. We assume that we have a problem in the 21st century. And we assume that we should be part of the responsible people trying to solve that problem. And we also assume that Sufism may have something to offer. And what we did not actually conclude is whether Sufism can actually solve that problem or not, which is what we're going to discuss together today. So we are going to look at Sufism as one of the competing solutions, one of the competing solve the problem of the 21st century. So I'm going to look at. Before anything, let's speak a little bit about what is Sufism. To make it simple, is mysticism. the mystical aspect of Islam. That is Sufism, right? In Islam, you have rituals that prayers, then giving zakat, then performing hajj, then fasting, and all of those. These are the rituals that make you a Muslim, right? But there's a different dimension to that. There's a spiritual dimension to that. When you're engaging in those things, how do those things make you feel? For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, when he speaks about prayers, he would say in Surah Al-Mu'minun, for example, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ, when they are establishing prayers. Those who are 100% attentive when they are establishing prayers. So there's a difference between actually praying and being attentive while praying, right? Two different things. First is the ritualistic aspect of it, the performance as the ritualistic aspect of it. But the khushu' that you have while praying is the spiritual dimension to the prayer. And that is what Sufism is all about, right? Al-Imam Al-Imam Abu al-Fath al-Busti, for example, when he's talking about the definition of Sufism, he put it in the poetry. He said, تنازع الناس في الصوفي واختلفوا وظنه البعض مشتقا من الصوفي ولست أمنح هذا الاسم غير فتى صاف فصوفيا حتى سمي الصوفي. That people have disagreed over the meaning of the word Sufi. تنازع الناس في الصوفي واختلفوا. They have different opinion about what's the meaning of Sufi. And some people think that the name gets its origin from Suf. Suf is the like the fur of an animal that some Sufis in those days used to cover their body, right? And they say that's the origin. But he said, but as far as I'm concerned, that is not the meaning of Sufi. Sufi is a mushtaq from the word as-safa, someone whose heart, whose mind, whose spirit is so clean, that is so clean, that is not contaminated with anything. That is the one that I call Sufi. So let's look at the origin. The origin actually we would say is, or it has originated together with Islam. When you're talking about Sufism, you would have to talk about the ibadah aspect of it, the khalwa, azkar aspect of it, then you have to talk about the mystic aspect of it, then you have to talk about the akhlaq aspect of it. These are the three aspects of Sufism. Much later, the at-tanzir, at-tasawwuf al-nazari, which we can call the theorization process of Sufism, is added onto the three. So when you look at these first three, you would realize that they have actually originated together with Islam. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he reached 35 of age, he started getting bored with people. Didn't want to sit down with anyone. Didn't want to interact that much with people. He just wanted to seclude himself. That was the beginning of him going to Hira to go and seclude himself there. That's actually that is why he had to spend those years, about 5 years, he spent going to Hira, coming back, going there, coming back, until the time at which Jibril and Gabriel started coming and revealing unto him what Allah commanded him to reveal unto him. That's the beginning of Sufism. The ibadah, the akhlaq, and the result of those things. The safa that befalls the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and then he became what Allah meant for him to become. That was the origin. So you look at his, because you would see the interaction, Islam wasn't actually just the rituals that some fuqaha want us to believe today, for example, right? This example I often want to give is that, look, the Holy Quran has more than 6,000 verses. But when you look at those 6,000 verses, you realize that about 3% of them are what you can call ayatul tashri', right? Or ayatul ahkam. Ayatul ahkam. Because it's about 600 and is about 571 or thereabout. Right? These are the ayat that are talking about fiqh. They are the ayat that are talking about the rituals in terms of hukum, farida, nafila, prohibited, haram, halal, and all of that. It's about 3% of the Holy Quran. The remaining part of Quran is teaching you al-akhlaq through the stories of prophets before Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, the stories of what happened between Muslims and non-Muslims, the stories of how other prophets related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The story of other really good people, like the story of Uzair, for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أن قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعض يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى الحمار كيف وانظر إلى الحمار وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. You look at this beautiful story narration of this Saleh, this good person that is one of the Jewish people, is a story of how an individual human being who is not a prophet can relate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will show him miracles because of the cleanliness of his heart, because of how purified that person is. He can actually have a conversation. I would have given the story, I would have given the example of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who in the same chapter, in fact, verses very close to these ones that I've just recited, where he was asking Allah, كيف تحيي الموتى, and Allah said unto him, أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن يطمئن قلبي قال فخذ 4 من الطير فصرهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعهن يأتينك سعيا وأعلم أن الله Azizun Hakim. Ibrahim alayhi salam asking Allah, oh Allah, how do you breathe life into non-living things so that they become living? And Allah has directed him through the process of how he does that. And he even gave Ibrahim the chance to do that himself. But the reason I didn't give the example of Ibrahim is because someone might say that Ibrahim is actually a prophet. So it's very normal for prophets to have that kind of conversation with Allah and see miracles. But actually, even non-prophets do have those kind of conversation throughout the Quran, just like we have seen in the case of Uzair. And if we look at the case of the mother of Maryam alayhi salam, that's the grandmother of Isa alayhi salam, the way she had a conversation with God when she was pregnant, she was saying ربي إني نظرت لك ما في بطني محررا فتقبل مني إنك أنت السميع العليم فلما وضعتها قالت ربي إني وضعتها أنثى والله أعلم بما وضعت وليس الذكر كالأنثى. To the end of the verses and the end of the story, this is a woman, pregnant woman, having a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about things she wants to happen in her life, and they actually do happen beyond her expectation. Why? Because she was that purified, so she was a Sufi. Right, so you would see the majority of the Quran is those kind of stories, the majority teaching us how to be purified, and that is the basic meaning of being a Sufi. It's not about some rituals like we would see some Darwish are doing in Egypt or in Turkey and willing. All of those things are the khushu of tasawwuf. They are the cover, but they are not the actual content. The actual content, you go throughout the Quran, the majority of Quran is actually talking about Sufism. This, I know it's really a very big claim to make, but I'm making this claim, and if anyone wants to dispute it, we can have a conversation about that. So the majority of Quran is actually talking about Sufism rather than talking about all the rituals that form the basis of what we call Islam today. And if we go back to a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will see the same thing. The majority of the hadiths are not actually talking about the ahkam or the jurisprudence or whatever, even though we will see that the scholars of hadith, when they wanted to do the compilation of hadith in the 2nd century, in the time that was called Asr Tadween, that is the time of compilation of the history of Islam, we would see that they have done the compilation mostly based on the ahkam. That was a situational thing. They have done that because of the situation of the time. At the time, Islamic scholars were kind of exercised by the leadership, the political leadership of the Muslim societies, the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and all of those. They ostracize them, and those people would have to keep themselves busy intellectually so that they won't feel bored by the ostracization of the political leadership of Islam, as a result of which they engage in those forms of compilation of hadith. The chain of hadith came as a result of that. The fiqh books came as a result of that. The hadith book being in form of fiqh also came as a result of that, and all of those things. But actually, look at some of the hadiths of Imam al-Nawawi in Nawawi compilation of 40 hadiths. Hadith Jibril, when Jibril came to Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, asking him about Islam, he asked him, Ya Rasulullah, ma huwa al-Islam? He said, Al-Islam an tashhad an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa tuqima salah wa tuti az-zakah wa tahujja al-bayt wa tasum Ramadan wa tahujja al-bayt in istata'ta ilayhi sabila. Mention 5 things. Ritualistic. But even among the 5 things that the Prophet mentioned as the ritualistic, the first one has nothing to do with rituals. And tashhad an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah is not a ritual, right? Because it's something that you have to hold in your heart, that yes, Allah is one and only. I accept him as creator, I accept him as the one to worship. This is not a ritual. Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. This is not a ritual. This is something that you hold onto your heart. That is the beginning of Sufism. Because by holding that into your heart, you have already become the subject of what Ibrahim alayhi salam referred to when he was asking Allah to send a messenger unto his people who is coming to come and purify them. When he was saying, رَبُّ وَيُعَلِّمْهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to purify them, and that is what we're talking about. The purification aspect of Islam is what we are talking about, and that is Sufism. So by saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, you've already started the process. It's like just a registration. You've done a registration for the purification to begin to work on you. So we look at Quran, we have seen the majority of it is talking about that purification, either through stories or through reading a recitation of the Quran itself, right? We see that even the rituals of Islam, they are all about purification. وَأَقِيمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ, like Musa alayhi salam said unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was having a conversation with Allah. So yes, all things in Islam, you would realize that the majority of Islamic text is talking about the purification, which we think is Sufism, or what Sufism is all about, not the other way around. And you look at the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will see Sufism at work. Aisha radiallahu anha was asked about the behaviors of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasallam, and she said, كان خلقه القرآن, his behaviors is Quran. هو قرآن يمشي على الأقدام. He is a walking Quran. Right? So if the Prophet is a walking Quran, are you going to tell me that it's all about the ahkam? Definitely no, because the majority of Quran is not ahkam. The majority of Quran is about akhlaq rather than ahkam. Etiquette. And etiquette is the gate through which you enter into purification, and that is what is known as Sufism. And you look at the life of the Sahaba, you would see the same thing, right? So that is why when you come down after the Sahaba, you would realize that would tell you that the Tabi'un steadfast in terms of worshiping Allah. They were more spiritually charged than anyone who is possibly coming after them. So you have to like double up for you to be able to catch up with them. So that is why the people at the time of the Tabi'in were doing more nawafil, were doing more fasting, were doing more sadaqah, were doing more of anything that Sahaba were doing, but at the same time, they won't be able to catch up with the Sahaba. But that was exactly what they were trying to do, to catch up with the Sahaba. Remember, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that his Sahaba, whatever we do, we are not going to Allah fi ashabi, لو أن أحدكم تصدق بمثل أحد ذهبا لما بلغ something that they have given in sadaqah, you would never reach what they have given, even half of it. Even if you are to give sadaqah with gold equivalent to the mountain of Uhud, right? That's what the Prophet said about them. So they are more spiritually charged than anyone else. So they are more Sufis than anyone else. So those of us that are coming later, we have to double up for us to be able to catch up with what the Sahaba have done. So coming down, in the 4th century, that was the time. In the 2nd century, that was the time when Sufism, in form of forming a Zawiya, where people will come and gather and do azkar for the purpose of the purification. That was when it came in the 2nd century under one of the great Sufis known as Abu Ishaq. And then after Abu Ishaq came people like Junaid al-Salik. They are the people who begin to camp people in the form that we do today and actually give them specific azkar, because the spiritual charging is moving far away from people. So there's need for people to do it in a more formal and more organized way than it was done in the past. And the 4th century, that was when books like the books known as Ar-Risala al-Qushayriya began to surface in the field. Some people refer to Ar-Risala al-Qushayriya written by Imam al-Qushayri about Sufism. It's a concise book in about 350 pages or thereabout, as the first formulation of Sufism. But I would say that's a little bit erroneous, because the book actually, if you read the introduction of the book, you will see that Imam al-Qushayri is saying the reason why he wrote that book wasn't actually to articulate Sufism and teach people as a new field of knowledge. But it was because he realized people were losing it. People were forgetting what they have already known. That was the reason he was trying to capture the remnants of the knowledge of Sufis so that it won't get lost. He wasn't actually bringing something new according to him in the introduction of the book. No, that wasn't what he was doing. He wasn't bringing something new, but he was trying to arrest what did not get lost so that it won't get lost completely. You read the book, you would hear him saying that all the shuyukhs were lost. We are no longer seeing the wara. We are no longer seeing the ostracization of the people from dunya. We are no longer seeing the same pattern of ibadah. We are no longer seeing all those things in the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means the ummah are losing it bit by bit. There is need for me to compile the knowledge that is already available before it's lost completely, so that I'll introduce it to people. And that was around the time when people like Imam al-Ghazali came into the scene. Imam al-Ghazali, for example, became the most knowledgeable person in his time. He was an equivalent of what you can call the Vice Chancellor of Harvard University today. But at the same time, he realized that he really didn't know that much because he didn't have that wherewithal in the spiritual realm of the things. So at some point in his life, he got really bored with whatever it is that he knew. And he came back to Sham and secluded himself for 9 years, after which he wrote his book Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, and then he became a real Sufi. He used to say this popular quote, we sought for knowledge not because of Allah, but knowledge forced us to make it because of Allah, or in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the 4th and 5th century, people like Imam al-Ghazali started surfacing, and at that time, and that was the time we know as the compilation time and articulation time of Sufism, Asr al-Tanzir as-Sufi. So they started writing books about Sufism. Just after that time, people like Ibn Arabi, al-Hallaj, people like Jalaluddin al-Rumi and all of those came to the scene with knowledge that has never been seen before. Actually, not that the knowledge was not there before, but it wasn't formalized and it wasn't documented in that form before, so they documented all that knowledge. A little bit, what are you going to see? You would see that these people that have done this large work in terms of Sufism. They are actually the ones who save the Iman of the Ummah. Because if you look at the history of Islam, you would see a lot of bloodshed right from the time of the Sahaba, immediately after the Prophet ﷺ, died, ﷺ, disagreements begin to happen between the Sahaba. We have witnessed the killing of Umar ibn al-Khattab. After the killing of Umar ibn al-Khattab, then the assassination of Usman. After the assassination of Usman, then the big disagreement between Ali ibn Abi Talib and two major the war that have taken place between Ali ibn Abi Talib and Sayyidah Aisha, the Mawqa'atul Jamal, and then we have seen the Mawqa'atul Safain between Ali ibn Abi Talib and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, a lot of bloodshed. After that bloodshed, then the Umayyad dynasty took over. After they took over, then the Muslims, quite honestly, lost the sense of direction at that point. There's no specific authority that can be able to say that this is the direction for the Muslim Ummah to take, dependent from the intellectual. So the intellectual cannot dictate, or the intelligentsia of the Muslim cannot dictate to the political leadership what is right or what is wrong. At the same token, the political leadership cannot dictate to the intelligentsia what is right and what is wrong. So each one of them is independent. And that was when we begin to have what was known as Asr Duwailat, small Islamic nations. That was completely new to Islam. We didn't know anything like that until when the Muslims Ummah lost sense of direction at all. So we began to have these pockets of places called, we have in Granada, a Muslim nation, in Spain, a Muslim nation, in the Arabia, a Muslim nation, in Africa, a Muslim nation, different Muslim nations all over the place, no sense of direction. Who are the people that have been able to actually save the heart, save the faith of Muslims? Are the Sufis. Those Sufis who kept organizing themselves in Zawiya, writing those books, are the ones who, so they became kind of the spiritual center of Islam. That is as a fulfillment of the prophecy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ التَّزْكِيَةَ. So that purification became the center that holds the power of Islam. They are the only ones who can direct Muslim Ummah and tell them this is what to do and this is how to go about life and this is what to do, this is what not to do, right? And it remained that way till today. So in a nutshell, that's what Sufism is all about. I think the lecture is not going to be very lengthy, but my idea of how to give talk is that question and answer session should be longer. So now very quickly, I'll go into the 21st century and talk a little bit about it. And then we will see if we have any question and answers, we go to them. Okay. 21st century human being. Why do we think that we have a problem in the 21st century? I think it's right to think that we have a problem because then there's going to be a problem. Human being is full of problems, and where you find him not, it's not within the rhyme given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's bound to have a problem. And we do have problems in the 21st century. Like, for example, we believe as Muslims that Islam is the religion that Allah made, the religion that is going to take over the world and lead the way in the right direction. Not that take over in political terms or military terms, no, but to kind of give direction, intellectual direction and spiritual direction to the world. But today the case is entirely different from what we think should happen. So today, when we're talking about the world and the leadership of the world, we are inevitably talking about the United Nations, we are talking about the World Bank, we are talking about all these organizations, and they are the ones giving the direction to the world. And in the direction they are kind of giving, we see that we have many challenges, the majority of which include climate change is a big challenge today in the world. Artificial general intelligence is a big challenge in the world. To talk about climate change, we see that climate is changing. The world is becoming hotter than it used to be. And there's a projection that at some point, this place is probably going to be inhabitable by human beings, or for that matter, by any living organism, because of how the weather is becoming hotter and hotter by the day. This is a major problem today. Another thing is artificial general intelligence. We are creating artificial intelligence to the point that we think in the future, the artificial intelligence is going to take over. It's going to even conquer the human being and conquer the world and take over from human beings, and then we'll be subservient to the artificial intelligence. Is a second major problem today. Another problem that the human being have in the 21st century is biotechnology risk. Biotechnology risk is another aspect of life that we delve into, and it becomes a real problem today. Then another one is ecological collapse. Because of the way we cultivate the land, today we have a major problem in ecology. It's no longer balanced ecology as it used to be because of human beings. And we see that many organizations and sometimes individual researchers provide solutions to that problem. Some of them would say depopulating the world, keeping the world population under 500,000. Some of them would say 7 million. Some of them would say 5 billion. 7 billion, not 7 million. 7 billion, some of them would say. Different kind of solutions. Then we have another problem of molecular nanotechnology. Is another major problem. We are moving in the direction that some people would say that the whole of this existence only exists in the human mind. It doesn't have an actual real existence in the world because of the discoveries in molecular nanotechnology. And then we have possibility of nuclear holocaust. Nuclear bomb that some countries, major countries in the world are creating, are major threats to the very existence of the human being, right? But we think that today we have some really, really crazy presidents who have the nuclear bomb button in their office. They can just press it and that will be the end of the mankind. Another problem we have is overpopulation, right? Since we are talking from the perspective of those who are living the world today, World Bank, United Nations, so we have this problem they articulated is overpopulation. Based on the estimations of the World Bank and the United Nations and all these organizations, the capacity of the world is around 7-8 billion, but the population of the world is ballistically expanding and it's probably going to peak at 9 billion. At that point, we are going to exhaust the capacity and it is going to be very difficult for everyone. And another one is global pandemic. Another one is global pandemic. Currently, we are living one of the pandemics, and in the years before we lived, humanity lived many pandemics, and we lived through it. And today we are going through coronavirus pandemic, and there's possibility of other kinds of pandemics in the future. And pandemics, by their very nature, they are a threat to the very existence of human beings. So when we want to look at the problems specifically to regions, for example, in Africa, one of the major problems is Darfur problem, for example, right? We have problem of poverty, we have problem of disease, we have problem of desertification, malnutrition, and regional conflict. And when we want to look at, let's say, problem of aging, We have aging population, demographics transition in places like Vienna and places like Canada, places like United States of America, and places like those. And we also have agricultural problem, inability to sustain agriculture and food security for many countries in the world. We have problems of AIDS and lack of ability to prevent HIV/AIDS, and a lot of problems. We have problems of atomic energy, children, decolonization, and a lot of problems. Okay. How can Sufism be a solution to all these problems that we have today? That is the question. How can Sufism be a solution to all these problems that we have today? If we look at all the problems, we realize one thing. What do all those problems have in common? What is the common denominator of all those problems? The common denominator of all those problems is...
Sorry, Prof. Sorry to interrupt you. Please, if you are with us, endeavor to mute your audio for us to listen to the Prof very well. Please mute your audio. Some of us are interrupting. Your background noise is interrupting. Please mute your audio. Thank you. Professor, you can continue. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So you see, I was talking about the problems. I was mentioning the problems that we have. I said in some countries like child poverty, child labor, child abuse, child mortality, global education, problem for children. You know, problems of decolonization, problem of disarmament of some armed young people, problems of family, food insecurity, governance, health, human rights abuses, wars, conflict, refugees, and humanitarian issues, and all of those things. So I'm asking this question: what is the common denominator among all these problems that we have today? The common denominator is human being. And if you want to look more critically, you would realize that if not all, most of the problems are artificially created by the human being. Global warming is created by human being. Our lack of responsibility in the way we engage with the world. That's what brought global warming. Conflict is human created, right? It's artificially created. Atomic bomb is created by human being. Overpopulation itself is created by human being. Imbalanced ecology is created by right abuse. All the problems. You can mention whatever problem, I can guarantee you that that problem is artificially created by human being. What is it that will motivate human being to create all these problems? The only reason why human being will create all these problems is because that human being is not a balanced human being. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ التَّقْوِيمِ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Allah has created human being to be of exalted position. That is the Sufi that we're talking about, that human being that is highly purified by the messages of prophets. And then when the human being decided to debase himself to the lowest of the law, that is when human being will go about doing unbecoming things. And that is when human being becomes, as described in the Holy Quran, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ رَءُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. That is when he is at the highest level. But if he didn't become that, then he is the one that is spreading the corruption in the earth, as described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you are to get a human being and purify that human being through the methodology of Sufism, that human being will become the right human being that would disappear completely, and you would not see an iota of a problem in the world. Thank you very much. And I think that brings us to the end of my presentation. And then if there are questions and answers, I wouldn't mind taking a few of them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Prof, thank you very much. While you were presenting, we are deliberating and we feel you need more time. So we have added extra 10 minutes for you. Prof, I think you can continue in the next 10 minutes. Inshallah, our questions are ready for you. So far, we have 4 questions for you to answer. We shall take the questions, inshallah. We've added extra 10 minutes for you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I was trying to thank you very much for that. And when I was giving the presentation, you can see that I was trying to rush myself so that I want to see whatever it is that I need to say. But since I have extra 10 minutes, let me see how I can wisely utilize those 10 minutes, right? Okay. I will drive the point down home, and I will give a couple of examples about what is happening here at home. In Nigeria today, we have major problems. We have problem of poverty. We have problem of young people not having jobs. We have family breakdown problems. We have all these sort of things. But at the same time, we have government that at best, the best description you can give to this government is that we have government that are not functional, non-functional government. As a result of which, we are beginning to see some riots, some protests. The most recent one we have seen is the SARS protest, right? But before the problem of SARS become an overwhelming problem in the southern part of Nigeria, we have had a problem. We have had the problem of kidnapping and banditry and all of that in the northwest. But at the same time, when the SARS protest came about, we did not see most of the states of the northeast and all of the states of the northwest participating in the SARS. This has been an interesting question to me and to many people. How comes when the SARS protest came, the most vulnerable part of the country did not participate in the SARS? And the only explanation you can give is to find the common denominator among those young people. And the common denominator, without a doubt, is the fact that these people are Muslims mostly, and Islam in northern Nigeria has been taught to people through Sufism, whether we like it or not, including those of us who wanted to be antagonizing Sufism. We learn Islam through Sufism. So northern Nigeria, despite the fact that we have many non-Sufis, in fact, many antagonists to Sufism, they are more, everyone in the north is more than any other kind of version of Islam. The quality of being patient, the quality of being reliant upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that transcendental quality of trying to ascribe everything back to Allah rather than trying to look at the immediate causes of that thing and try to react to those things, stimuli and reaction is sort of eliminated in the north because of the way in which we learn Islam and in the way in which Islam was introduced to us through the Sufis and all of that. So this is a model of how Sufism can purify a person, even without the person knowing, because Sufism may be taught to a person at different levels. Sufism may be taught to you at intellectual level so that you become very knowledgeable about what Sufism is all about and what it is not. And Sufism can be taught to a person through culture, just like it is prevalent in northern Nigeria. We are culturally Sufis, all of us, including those who call themselves Wahhabis or Izala or whatever, but all of us culturally are Sufis. And Sufism can be taught to you through practice. That is the kind of Sufism that you would learn by going and initiate yourself into Tariqa, either Tijaniya or Qadiriya or whichever one. That is the practical kind of teaching of Sufism. You go and do the azkar that you need to do and get purified and be an embodiment of Sufism as you walk. All right, the aura around you would give the sense of this is a different kind of person. This is a special kind of person and all of that. But what is happening right now in northern Nigeria is the cultural Sufism. All of us are Sufi acculturated. So our understanding of life, our reaction to things is purely Sufist, and that gives a model of how a human being can be culturally Sufi and go about doing his things without causing trouble. And it's very obvious that the people of the northern part of this country are less in terms of causing. I'm talking about the peaceful people in the north, the peaceful, normal citizens, in terms of causing trouble than other parts of the country. So this is the model. This lecture is trying to advocate this kind of model, that for us to have a holistic solution to the problems we have in the world, then we can do that by using Sufism as a model of acculturating people, so that everyone would know that there's a hierarchy of engagement in the society, and there's a supernatural hierarchy that takes over everything and takes care of everything, and we don't have to react, we don't have to behave irresponsibly in the world, because the whole idea is that human being is here to be a vicegerent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah is creating Adam, that is the conversation Allah has had with the angel. He said unto them, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. إذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون علم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم." Notice that angels, when they are having this conversation, are very intelligent. Allah said, I'm going to. Why would you do this? Why would you put someone there who is going to spread corruption on earth? When you see the Dima, who's going to shed a lot of blood on there? Why would you do that? You want a vicegerent, we are vicegerent already, because we glorify your name. Why would you place someone else who is going to spread corruption and who's going to shed light, right? So the whole idea is that human being is supposed to be a vicegerent of God here. Our topic is not to discuss the conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angel, but the whole idea of vicegerence. So if a person accepts to be a vicegerent, then he is definitely going to get purified. And by getting purified, he becomes a Sufi. And by becoming a Sufi, there's nothing he would do except by the instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will not go about creating an atomic bomb because we know it's against the will of Allah. And we are not worshiping ourselves here, we are worshiping Allah. We are not going to go about taking greedily everything onto ourselves through this consumerism that we see all over the world, especially in the western part of the world, and leaving the rest of the world in poverty and suffering and without good drinking water, without health, without this, without that. We are not going to go about doing that. We are not going to go wage wars against other human beings except by the instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you will see that the way in which a human being today turned the world, he turned the world to be everything under him, and he's the master. So he has taken the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sorry, Prof, sorry to interrupt. You have less than 60 seconds to round off. Yes, you have less than 60 seconds to round off. Yeah. So
the point here is that the human being has taken the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has taken God out of the equation, and by taking God out of the equation, he appointed himself. That is the why he will go about doing irresponsible things. And for us to rectify that, then we have to place human being where he belongs and place Allah where he belongs. And human being has to be that humble to accept that he is a subject to someone who is higher than him, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the whole idea about Sufism. Thank you very much for the additional time. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you, Professor, for that wonderful presentation. I'm sure all of us have benefited in one way or the other from what Prof has said. We have 5 questions for you, Prof. Sir. I don't know the mode you will prepare to answer the question. Should we read the questions before the answers, or we take them one after the other?
No, we do one after another so that I won't forget.
Yes. Thank you for that. I want to crave your indulgence, sir. We have very limited time to take the questions. I think we will allocate 2 minutes per question. The first question is from Salihu Yunus Salihu, who happens to be our president. He's asking the Prof, he said, is Prof saying that Sufism is the origin of Ibadah and all forms of Islamic knowledge? That's the question, sir.
I don't understand. Who said that?
From your presentation, he's deducing that you said that Sufism is the origin of Ibadah and all forms of Islamic knowledge. Is he right? I think that's the question.
No, I don't think that is correct. And I don't think that is what I said. What I said is that when you look at the Holy Quran, you will realize that most of it is talking about another, either by telling us the story of some prophets or telling us the story of some good people and how they related with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I said that when you look at Ibadat, that is the most juicy part of Ibadat is Sufism, because the most juicy part of it is an example of وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِصَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ in Surah Al-Mu'minun, when I said that the rituals of prayer itself is the ibadah, but the khushu' in the heart, the way you feel when you pray, which differs from one person to another, that is Sufism. And that is the juiciest part of it. That's what I said.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor. That is well understood. The second question is by Yunus Salihu. Says, can Sufis be recognized by their actions, or it's something that is in the soul or in the heart, only known by Allah? Can Sufis be recognized by their actions, or is something that is in the heart, only known by Allah?
I understand the question, I think.
Yeah.
Sufis are of stages, and Sufism itself is of stages, several stages, right? And it's even impossible for someone to exhaust the stages. So at some point, you may not recognize a Sufi, it's the way he feels in his heart. But at some point, you realize when you see frequent occurrence of things in the way he behaves. Because if a person is truly a Sufi, that means that person is closer to Allah than others. And if that person is closer to Allah than others, then definitely that person behaves differently. The way in which he approaches life is different because his interpretation to life is different. He's going to have more wara than being more careful the way he do things, and tawadu, he's going to have a better tawadu than other people, right? And Ghaddul Basar, he's going to have better of that than other people. So by those things, you may definitely know. But the thing is that most of the things that a Sufi would do, which will make you recognize him, are things that are generally recommended or highly recommended by Islam, right? The tawadu is recommended. Al-wara is recommended. Ghaddul Basar, all of these things, right? But the only thing is that a true Sufi is the one that observes those things more than other people. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. That question is well answered, and I'm sure Yunus Salihu understands what the professor is saying. The third question we have is from Mubarak Umar Farouk. He said, nowadays people call themselves Sufis, while their deeds and actions can't justify that. For example, some may think reciting Salatul Fatih could make them Sufis or Sufi adherents. He said, Professor, how can we address such issues?
This is something that has to do with a person between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Title would not add anything in your life, and lack of title. In fact, the Sahaba did not even call themselves Sufis. In fact, we call ourselves Sufis because of the need to identify, which happened much later, about 200 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to be quite honest with you, the title Sufi on its own has no value whatsoever, will not add whatever value to you. It is the action that will add the value, not the title. So with or without the title, if you do the right thing, you are a Sufi. And if you did do the right thing, the title will not add anything to you. You can call yourself Sufi, you can call yourself Wali, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. If your action does not justify the title, then you are not it, you lost it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. The next question, second to the last, is Sufism is criticized for isolating the Sufi adherents from political participation, a philosophy that renders the Ummah politically incapacitated. If this opinion is true, how can the Sufi adherents address it? This question is from Murtala Ahmed.
Well, this has some historical roots. It has some historical roots in the way Sufism, as it is today, articulated starting from the 2nd century, when not just Sufis, but all people that, in fact, let me say the whole of Islamic intelligentsia was ostracized from the political leadership, which I have mentioned in the beginning of the lecture. So the Sufis actually accepted the ostracization and didn't participate in politics right from those days, but it was a darura. It was as a result of a problem which I think we have today to correct that. We have to change that. And alhamdulillah, I can say that I am seeing some changes today, because some people who we know as Sufis are actually participating in politics today, very, very unlike in the past. The thing is that two problems. One, we still don't see the number of people commensurate with the population of the Sufis participating in politics. The number has to increase. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, there is no way we can organize ourselves and in the name of Sufism support people and cannot promote going into politics. Because the moment we do that, then we are no longer about self-purification, we are into something else. We are becoming an organization that, it's very tricky, by the way. It's very tricky. So we cannot make ourselves a party. We cannot make ourselves an organization that is overtly promoting politicking. We cannot do that. We can do that as just Muslims, right? But as Sufis, we have a common goal, a specific goal, and that goal is soul purification and getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If one of us on his own right want to participate in politics, fine and good, we can support the person. But to come together and say that let's support this person to go into politics, that means we are either mixing our goal with something else, we are abandoning our goal completely and taking a new goal, which is not the goal of being a Sufi.
Yeah.
That's my answer to that.
Thank you, Professor. It's well understood, and I'm sure Murtala Ahmed understands what the professor is saying. The last question for today, sir, is from Said Umar Abdul Karim. He said, how can a Sufi strike a balance between soul purification etiquettes, that's taqwa and tawadu, and the modern day politics, whereas an aspirant may glorify and sell out himself, expressing some attitudes considered to impact negatively to the teachings of Sufism?
I don't think, if I understand the question very well, I don't think this is an answer that someone calling himself a scholar or whatever he calls himself can answer to someone. I think this is something that the only person that can answer is the one who wants to participate in the politics. The person who knows that he's a Sufi and wants to participate in politics, knowing fully well what are the requirements of being a Sufi and knowing fully well what are the requirements of being a politician, is the only person who can answer that question to himself. To tell you that this is the way to strike a balance when actually I don't know what are the things that you may need to do while you engage in politics, I think that will amount to Hebrews. So I think the person is the only one who would answer that question to himself. If you want to get into politics, you better know whether there are lines that you cannot cross, as long as you want to remain committed to your Sufism. We cannot be like the people who will tell you that in the name of Darura you can go. And I know that there are many trends right now in the world in the name of Sufism. In the name of Sufism today, there are countries that you will go, some Sufis will tell you, or some people who call themselves Sufis will tell you that in the name of politics, you can go and do whatever politicians do, even if that include drinking, if that include whatever kind of sin, as long as that will give you access to power so that you benefit Muslims in the name of Darura. But Islamic scholars will tell you that ad-darura tuqaddaru biqadariha. There are specific ways in which darura will be made halal to you. And it has to have to demolish one of the al-masalih al-amma in Islam. As long as it's not that, then I can't tell you that you can go and this is darura, right? So that is why this is a question. In fact, there are some people today, most especially in Europe, who call themselves Sufis and they actually do the practices of Sufism without even being Muslims, right? Some people mostly will call themselves an-Naqshbandi. They are initiated into the tariqah of Naqshbandiya, but they are not Muslims, and they are plentiful today in Europe. So there are all sort of trends, but the actual Sufism, that is the right Sufism, is the Sufism that restricts itself by the boundaries placed by Sharia. You can't go out of Islamic Sharia in the name of being a Sufi. You can't do that because Sharia is the base and the Sufism is the superstructure on the base. Once you lose the base, then you lost it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm sure the answers are well understood. On this note, I would like to call on our president in person of Salihu Yunus Salihu to give us his vote of thanks. Then it will be followed by a closing prayer, inshallah. Mr. President, sir, you can take over. Thank you, Professor.
Well, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First and foremost, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making this program possible, and we sincerely thank our noble speaker, Professor Sheikh Kabir Yusuf Hamdani, for finding time out of his tight schedule to be with us, to educate us, and to transform us. We must say that, Professor, we all have been inspired and transformed. Jazakallahu khairan, and we hope to invite you for more events, inshallah, coming up. Jazakallahu khairan. And to our able moderator, I thank you sincerely for making this event lively and interesting as well. You have kept us all in suspense all through. Jazakallahu khairan for your effort. To our very, very vibrant Executive Council members who have done excellently well to make sure this event became a success. Jazakumullahu khairan. We thank you so much. And for our contributors who have contributed to make this event a success. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replenish your pockets and bless you richly. And for those who have wanted to contribute, but we are not able to due to some economic restrictions, فَسَعْيُكُمْ مَشْكُورٌ جَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا, and we hope to see more of this event in the nearest future, as inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our YouTube channel will soon be launched. And on this note, I say thank you so much. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, our last item on the agenda is a closing prayer. It was supposed to be delivered by Muhammad Mustafa Ridwan, who happens to be our project coordinator too, but I can see that he is not online. So I would like to seek the permission of the president to call on Mr. Yunus Salihu, our able IT person, to give us a closing prayer.
Well, our able IT specialist, Kwaro, Mr. Moderator, let me crave your indulgence to say that Salihu is far from him, so he's Yunus Anuhu. Just take him down to his real surname. Mr. IT specialist, فلتتفضل مشكورا. Pray for us.
What an honor. So please let us recite Fatiha 1, Qul Huwallahu 11 times, Salat al-Fatiha 10 times, and the other Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Should also recite Qul Huwallahu 3 times for our parents. For those that have died, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive them. And those that are alive, may Allah increase them in health.
Amen.
Yes.
Bismillah, Fatiha, Salat al-Fatih. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. ربي يا ربي فتمم فعلا ما قد كسبت أيترهم ليلا كما أجبت كل عبد سأل فيما مضى فحقك أن الآمال أنت الذي ترزق من تشاء متى تشاء كما تشاء ما شاء وأنت أكرم وأنت أرحم وأنت أجود وأنت أعلم أنت الغني القادر المريد ولا يكون غير ما تريد نظر لطف ثم عطف كافي إذ أنك الحي الذو الكافي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for attending this wonderful program. I want to remind our guests that this is going to be a monthly presentation, inshallah. So keep a date with us next month, inshallah. We shall come up with another topic and another presenter. It's going to be educative and going to be interactive and it's going to be beneficial to all of us, inshallah. You can see Diwani is playing from the background while we exit the room. Thank you very much. I look forward to see your faces again this month, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
فموسى وإبراهيم والروح كلهم توسل بالهادي الأمين فقربوا والكامل المحمود والسؤل والمنى وأنت الحبيب المصطفى والمقرب عليه صلاة الله ثم سلامه صلاة لنا كل المقامات تجلب صلى الله عليه وسلم. السلام عليكم.
جزاكم الله خيرا يا سيد.
إياكم.